Before we talk about the universe, let's slow down. Imagine standing under a quiet night sky. No noise, no rush, just darkness and distant light. At first, everything feels familiar. The moon, bilingual, the stars. Then a question gently appears. How big is all of this, really? Not poetic big, not cinematic big. Defined big in a way your mind was never trained to handle. Safeguard as we move outward, scale begins to break meaning. And that is where the discomfort starts. Not fear, just an awe. Arabs is where every sense of scale begins. It feels immense because it is all we have ever known. Oceans stretch beyond the horizon. Continents take days to cross. The sky appears endless when we look up from the ground. For the human mind, Earth represents the upper limit of large. Mountains feel permanent. Seas feel immeasurable. Distances feel meaningful because we can travel them. Yet this sense of greatness exists only within our experience. It is shaped by walking, by sailing, by flying, by what our bodies can reach. When we say something is vast, we mean it challenges our time and effort, not our understanding. Ists us because it takes a lifetime to explore, because it holds everything familiar. This is the quiet illusion we carry, that the largest things must be important, that size implies significance. Only later do we learn that Earth is not the reference point of the universe. It is simply where our thinking begins. And from that starting point, everything else slowly dissolves our certainty. Vastness. When Earth is placed beside the moon, something subtle changes. The moon feels close, almost reachable. Yet even here, Earth already begins to shrink. The confidence, a world. He feels like a detail. The sun is not aggressive in its dominance. It does not need drama to make its point. Its alone does the work. If sand, the sun would be a large sphere resting calmly beside it. Suddenly, the oceans do not matter. The continents lose their weight. The sky no longer feels infinite. Only our position does. This is how scale begins to shift. Not with force, but with comparison. What once felt vast now feels fragile. Central now felt incidental. And this is only the first step outward, supplemented that greatness is relative, and that our sense of importance is quietly borrowed from proximity. Medically, beyond the sun, space does not become crowded. It becomes empty. The close together, they drift across enormous silence. In effort, but in time. Light itself needs minutes and hours to cross these gaps. Nothing feels nearby anymore. From this perspective, the solar system is not a collection of worlds. It is a thin structure floating inside a vast absence. Its volume contains nothing at all. No sound, recommend. Even the outer planets exist in near isolation, separated by distances so large they resist imagination. Airborne. Here, size stops being about objects. It becomes about separation. The sun's influence stretches far, but its presence feels small against the surrounding dark. This is where intuition quietly fails, because emptiness has no reference that compare it to, no edges to define it, so the mind slows. not in fear, kissing not in quiet confusion. Universe begins to feel less like a place and more like a condition. Inside the solar system is placed instead what once felt vast becomes invisible at this scale. The Sun is one star among hundreds of billions. Its light blends into a slow racing river of stars. The galaxy stretches so wide that even light needs 100,000 years to cross it. From this distance, the solar system has no outline, no marker of importance, no special position. It moves quietly along the outer regions, far from the galactic center, following a path shared by countless others. The Milky Way does not notice this motion. It does not respond. Stars are born and die without reference to us. Entire systems form and vanish, while our planet completes a single orbit. Here, scale stops feeling numerical. It becomes existential. Are threatened, but because we are irrelevant to the structure itself. The universe does not erase us. It simply does not include us in its design. Beyond the Milky Way, the idea of uniqueness fades. Our galaxy is not rare. It is not especially large. It is not especially old. There is one spiral among countless others, slowly turning, its arms carrying light that has been traveling for a very long time. Plaintiffs with its own stars, its own planets, its own quiet motions through space. When we widen the view, galaxies appear everywhere, not scattered loosely, but arranged in vast patterns and filaments. They drift together in groups, bound by gravity, moving slowly through deep time. At this scale, the Milky Way loses its name. It becomes a single entry in an endless collection. Distances grow so large, and numbers stop helping. Millions feel the same. Behind the mind can no longer track position or direction. There is no left or right, no center to point toward. Wildfires upon layers of structure, stretching farther than comparison allows. Here the universe stops feeling like a place we inhabit. It feels like a process unfolding, indifferent to where we happen to be. As clusters of galaxies come into view, the universe begins to organize itself in ways that feel unfamiliar. Galaxies are no longer isolated islands. They gather, slowly, patiently, across distances that defy instinct. Gravity weaves them together into clusters, and clusters into even larger structures. Superclusters stretch across space like faint threads, forming patterns too large to see from within. From this perspective, emptiness is no longer empty. It has structure. It has shape. Blitz, though not one we can easily define. Light travels for hundreds of millions of years just to carry information from one region to another. What we see is not what exists now, but what existed long before Earth had oceans, before life learned to breathe. The universe reveals itself only through delay. Every image is a memory. Every observation is history. And then the scale widens again. The observable universe emerges not as a boundary, but as a limitation of perception. A horizon defined not by walls, but by time itself. Beyond this horizon, space does not end. Rectangular to receive information does. Confinement, there may be more galaxies, more structures, more layers of organization that will never reach us. Not because they are hidden, but because light has not had enough time. At this point, imagination begins to loosen its grip. The mind searches for reference and finds none. Forbidden, there is no center here, no edge that marks completion. Absent, headquarters looks the same, equally distant, equally unreachable. This is where numbers fully lose meaning. Billions of light years feel no different from trillions. The brain cannot build intuition from quantities it will never interact with. Understanding shifts into something quieter, a sense rather than a picture, a recognition rather than a model.
以及
Chum, we begin to notice the limits of our own design. The brain evolved for survival on the surface of a small planet. It is excellent at judging distance across land, at reading faces, at predicting motion nearby. Breastfeeding, it was never meant to hold cosmic time or distances that erase cause and effect. So, when the universe grows too large, the mind does not panic. It slows. While thoughts become sparse, language simplifies. Everything collapses into a single impression of vastness. This is not failure, it is adaptation. The brain, by letting go of detail, by refusing to simulate what cannot be lived. In this stillness, something subtle changes. The need to be central fades. The desire for dominance loses urgency. Human concerns do not disappear, but they soften. Welch that once felt heavy become lighter when placed against cosmic time. Conflicts feel temporary. Success feels brief. Not meaningless, but small. And small does not mean unimportant. It means fragile. It means rare. Consciousness exists only in narrow conditions. Awareness flickers briefly in a universe that does not require it. To a clarity gives weight to rara, to emotion. The universe does not care that we are here, but that does not reduce the value of being here. Standing before this scale, confessed the mind goes still, not from fear, but from acceptance. There is nothing to conquer, nothing to resolve, only the quiet understanding that existence does not need permission or explanation. We are present for a moment, within a vast process that continues without pause. And that moment, however small it may be, is enough. When the mind reaches this far, it no longer tries to measure. Measurement depends on comparison, and comparison has quietly disappeared. There is nothing left to anchor scale to human experience. No distance that can be walked, no time that can be waded through. What remains is awareness without proportion. The universe no longer appears as a collection of objects. It feels continuous, an uninterrupted field where matter, energy, and time blend together. Galaxies form and dissolve within this field without intention. Stars ignite, burn, and fade without memory. Nothing pauses to observe itself. From this view, permanence vanishes. Even the largest structures are temporary. They exist for spans of time that feel eternal to us, yet brief when placed against cosmic history. The universe is not stable. It is unfolding. Space itself expands. Nuffling distance increase without motion. The fabric beneath everything stretches. No destination. No end goal waiting to be reached. It simply happens. Here, the idea of control dissolves completely. Nothing can be influenced. Nothing can be accelerated or slowed. Human action, so powerful on Earth, has no reach here. Reaphralization does not demand despair. It invites humility. To exist inside a system that does not need us is to be freed from obligation to matter on cosmic terms. Meaning returns to smaller places, to moments, to relationships, to awareness itself. The brain, sensing it can go no further, stops trying to construct images. Thought becomes quiet observation, a resting state between curiosity and surrender. This stillness is often mistaken for emptiness. It is not empty. It is full of unresolved understanding, a space where questions no longer seek answers. The need to explain fades. The need to define weakens. What remains is presence. Breathtaking, in this presence, the universe is no longer distant. It is not something out there. Every atom within the body shares the same origin as the most distant galaxy visible to us. Only in arrangement and time. Thins. Fellowship between observer and observed physically. Press are not outside the universe looking in. We are one of its brief configurations, aware for a short while. This awareness is not grand. It does not reshape the cosmos. It does not alter expansion or gravity. But it experiences. And experience, however fleeting, is something the universe produces rarely. Stiffness do not experience themselves. Galaxies do not reflect. Matter does not wonder. Yet here, in a narrow band of conditions, matter pauses long enough to notice. That pause is consciousness. It does not elevate humanity above the universe. It simply distinguishes this moment from the vast silence surrounding it. The mind, recognizing this, remains still, not overwhelmed, just calm. Therapists. There is no urgency to understand more, no pressure to resolve scale into certainty. The universe does not ask to be understood. It continues regardless. And within that continuation, there is room for quiet existence, to live without cosmic importance, to care without permanence, to observe without ownership. This is not resignation, it is balance, a recognition that meaning does not need scale, it only needs awareness. And awareness, for as long it lasts, is enough. After the mind accepts this stillness, a quieter layer of understanding appears. Not new knowledge, but a different way of holding what is already known. Like a subject to study, it becomes a background condition, presence that does not demand attention, yet subtly reshapes perspective. Time begins to feel different here. Not faster or slower, but less personal. Human time is built from memory and anticipation, from yesterday and tomorrow. Cosmic time has no such structure. Stars do not remember their birth. Galaxies do not anticipate their end. They simply exist within long processes, unaware of duration. When this contrast becomes clear, urgency softens. The pressure to achieve, to accumulate, to leave a mark loses some of its weight. Submissive was neglectist of the arrangement. Philosoph everything meaningful to us clang on a temporary scale, and that is not a flaw. Temporary things are what can be felt, sometimes only briefly. What can be noticed, what can be valued. The universe is vast enough to be indifferent, price often to allow complexity. This balance is quiet, but exact. Huawei do not bend for intention. Kissing, they do not reward desire. They simply remain consistent, moment after moment. Within that consistency, atoms combine, molecules form, systems emerge, life appears. Forbes not as a goal, breaks as an outcome to be celebrated, but as a natural consequence of structure and time. Awareness follows, and awareness brings reflection, the ability to pause and ask, to look outward and inward simultaneously. This us above the universe, it places us inside it in a particular way. We are not observers standing apart. We are expressions of the same processes that shape stars and voids. In bones, phased in blood, the carbon in cells were forged in stellar interiors long before Earth existed. Nothing about the body is separate from cosmic history. It is only rearranged into a form that can notice itself. This realization does not need to feel profound. It does not need emphasis. Combathling. It can remain simple. We are small. Both statements can coexist without conflict. Meaning does not disappear when scale increases. It relocates. Forbidden, but shifts from dominance to presence, from control to participation. The universe does not offer purpose. It offers conditions. Pierced, purpose is something awareness creates locally, within limited time, within narrow space. This is not a weakness. It is the only place purpose can exist. Cosmic processes do not need reasons. Gasoline mines do. And so, purpose belongs to life, not to the universe as a whole. Understanding this removes a subtle burden, the burden of needing existence itself to justify personal meaning. It does not need to. Meaning can be small, fragile, temporary, and still complete. The mind, resting in this view, no longer strains to grasp the whole. It allows the universe to remain larger than comprehension, not as a failure, but as a natural boundary. Boundaries are not limitations. They are definitions of where attention belongs. Attention returns to immediate experience, to breathe, to motion, to thought. Does not shrink these things. It frames them. It reminds us that awareness is rare, not because the universe is empty, but because conditions for noticing are narrow. To notice is already significant. In this quiet understanding, the mind remains still, not overwhelmed, not detached. Oyobi. Lika present within a universe that continues expanding, unconcerned and vast enough to hold both silence and a brief moment of thought. As this perspective settles, the universe no longer feels distant or abstract, quietly present in everyday thought, not as something overwhelming, but as something steady and unchanging beneath experience. The sky no longer needs to be visible for its scale to exist. Even indoors, even in silence, the vastness remains. It does not press against the mind, it simply stays. This constancy introduces a subtle shift in how events are felt. Moments still matter, but they no longer demand absolute importance. Joy is lighter. Loss is softer. Both are temporary, and that transience gives them clarity rather than weight. Human stories unfold within narrow windows of time, falsely feel long because memory stretches them. Yet compared to cosmic time, a lifetime is a brief alignment of matter and awareness. This does not diminish it, it defines it. Meaning is no longer tied to endurance. It is tied to presence. The universe does not remember. It does not archive moments or preserve intention. It allows events to occur and then releases them. In this way, forgetting is not failure. It is part of the structure. Stars fade without regret. Galaxies shift without reflection. Nothing holds on. Human consciousness is different only because it can hold briefly. It can care. It can attach value. It can notice the passing. This capacity creates both beauty and discomfort. Attachment gives depth, and impermanence gives contrast. The universe offers neither comfort nor threat in this. It simply allows the conditions for both to arise. When this is understood, the need for cosmic validation fades. Existence does not need to be justified by scale. A moment does not need eternity to be complete. The mind stops comparing itself upward, preferring mother against size. Instead, attention narrows naturally to what can be touched, to what can be known directly. This narrowing is not retreat, it is alignment. Awareness functions best where interaction is possible, where response matters, where care has consequence. The universe beyond this does not require response. It will continue regardless of attention or neglect. This realization is not isolating, it is freeing. Responsibility returns to the local, to actions that affect other lives, to choices that shape immediate futures. Cosmic scale no longer distracts from this. It supports it by removing unnecessary pressure. Nothing needs to last forever. Nothing needs to reach beyond its context. The vastness of the universe absorbs excess ambition. It leaves behind intention without demand. Curiosity remains, but it is quieter, less urgent. Defamation for wonder without expectation, preventive about couple, is not move toward clarity. It unfolds according to conditions set long before awareness emerged. Awareness rides briefly within that unfolding. This brief ride is not accidental, merged. It is not planned. It is permitted. Unborn since enough. Profitability, the mind, resting here, no longer searches for final answers. It allows unanswered space to exist. As regained, smiles becomes informative, not because it explains, but because it does not resist. In this silence, thought slows, identity loosens. The self is no longer framed as a separate center, but as a temporary pattern of attention and memory. That pattern interacts and then dissolves back into process. Nothing is lost. Nothing is preserved. Blurred, the universe does not keep score. This absence of record is not frustrations. Freedom appears. Freedom from needing permanence. freedom from needing recognition beyond the moment. Subjectedness is allowed to be quiet, clinging to be preserved. The mind, sensing no requirement to expand further, rests naturally. Not in ignorance, not in awe, in acceptance. Brightness. The universe remains vast, unreachable, unfinished, forbidden. And within it, a brief moment of awareness continues, observing without urgency, existing without justification, still enough to notice, lying back about stillness itself, part of the structure. Brand themselves has been placed between thought and scale. The universe stops feeling like something to confront. It becomes something that simply surrounds. There is no longer a need to picture its full size, no attempt to trace edges or imagine boundaries. Those efforts quietly fall away. What remains is a steady awareness that everything happens within something far larger than comprehension, and that awareness does not demand action. Thematic life continues much as before, the same routines, the same patterns of care and attention, yet they now unfold with less resistance. Their outcomes, the uncertainty feels lighter, feels less change. The change feels less personal, needs to carry the weight of permanence. The universe does not preserve moments. It allows them to occur and then releases them. Understanding this changes how moments are held, grasped tightly. They are noticed, experienced, and allowed to pass. This way of holding experience does not flatten emotion. Joy is still joy. Loss is still loss. They claims absolute authority over meaning. Comicist scale introduces proportion. Choir, not comparison, but proportion. Human experience occupies an is possible. Pensions is not insignificant. It is specific, has consequence. Choice has effect. Care changes outcomes. Recognizing this boundary clarifies responsibility. We are not responsible for the universe, resemble for what can be influenced. This distinction removes a subtle confusion, the confusion between importance and reach. The universe is important in its immensity, but unreachable in its totality. Preferring life is reachable, but limited in scale. Truths can exist together without conflict. When this balance is accepted, ambition changes shape. It no longer stretches toward at the same time, toward understanding, toward relationship, toward presence. Progress becomes less about expansion and more about clarity, less about accumulation and more about alignment. The universe does not reward speed. It does not notice acceleration. Time flows regardless of urgency. This removes the illusion that faster is better, consciously is necessary, into its own pace. Thought slows to match experience. In this slowing, perception sharpens, details reappear. Textures of ordinary moments become more noticeable. Light, motion, foregoing. By abstract vastness, they coexist with it. The universe does not demand constant awareness. It allows forgetfulness. It allows focus. Wolfgang up at the night sky becomes optional, not required. The scale remains even when unseen. This quiet presence reshapes identity. Freshness is no longer framed as a center moving through a universe. It is understood as a temporary arrangement within it. Freshness, this does not erase individuality. It contextualizes it. Stabilize benefits becomes fluid, less defended, less rigid. Deflate are no need to be fixed against something infinite, nothing to prove against immeasurable distance. The universe offers no audience, no judgment, no expectation. Within this absence of evaluation, freedom emerges naturally. Free freedom to exist without justification. The mind, recognizing that nothing larger is required, rests more easily. But because questions have been answered, curiosity remains, but it is gentler. Wonder persists without urgency. The universe continues expanding. Structures form and dissolve. Light travels vast distances carrying old information. And then the present moment does not interrupt it. They occupy different scales, each complete in its own context. This separation allows peace. Not dramatic peace, quiet peace. The kind that does not announce itself. The mind stays still, not from awe or fear, but from alignment with limits. Limits are no longer seen as that make experience possible. Without limits, nothing could be noticed, nothing could be held. With limits, awareness finds its place, and in that place, existence continues calmly, inside a universe vast enough to remain unchanged. Examples to allow a moment of understanding to quietly occur. As this understanding deepens, the universe no longer feels like something that must be kept in mind. It does not require attention to remain vast. It does not shrink when ignored. Its scale exists independently of awareness. This realization removes a subtle tension, the tension of needing to remember how small we are, the tension of needing to stay humble before something infinite. There is no obligation to carry that weight. Humility does not need to be maintained. It arises naturally when comparison loses relevance. The universe does not compete with human experience. It simply exceeds it. Exceeding is not threatening, unreasonable. When this neutrality is felt, the mind stops oscillating between fascination and insignificance. Both reactions belong to the same misunderstanding. Bala must be interpreted emotionally, defaulted. Scale exists without commentary. It does not imply meaning. It does not remove meaning. Meaning is generated elsewhere. It forms where awareness meets limitation, where choice is possible, where response matters. The universe does not offer this space. It allows it with it too. But the universe does not be about consulted. This allowance is quiet and unconditional. Nothing needs to be earned to exist. Nothing universe does not require gratitude. It does not require reverence, whether noticed or not. Dominican continuous reshapes how permanence is understood. Permanence no longer feels like a goal. It feels like an illusion created by short timelines. Everything that appears stable is simply slow to change. Everything that feels permanent is only distant from its ending. Profitability, the universe holds no fixed forms, only processes unfolding at different speeds. Loss becomes less sharp, not because it hurts less, but because it is no longer interpreted as interruption. Change is not an event. It is the default condition. Nothing is taken away. everything moves on. The mind adjusts to this rhythm gradually, not all at once, not through insight, through repetition. Each time expectation dissolves without consequence. Each time an outcome passes without finality. Financially, attachment softens. Not attachment to people or moments, but attachment to outcomes lasting. Care remains intact, but it no longer demands continuity. This changes how attention is given. It becomes more precise, prized. Moments are no longer seen as steps toward permanence. They are complete in themselves. The universe does not extend moments. It does not archive them. Gaping completion happens locally. This local completion is enough. The mind begins to trust limitation. It stops pushing against it. Boundaries are no longer felt as restrictions. They are felt as structures that allow clarity. Without boundaries, experience would blur. Blindness, awareness would dissolve into scale. Limitation gives shape to meaning. The universe provides infinite scale. Life provides finite perspective. They coexist without conflict. There is no need to resolve them into a single explanation. They operate on different levels. The universe answers to physics. Life answers to experience. Neither invalidates the other. The mind no longer tries to compress the universe into understanding. It allows understanding to remain partial. Partial understanding is not ignorance. It is alignment with capacity. The brain was not designed to hold infinity, narrowly to respond within narrow conditions. Confessed recognizing this is not surrender. It is respect for design. The mind functions best when it stops attempting to exceed itself. P. In this state, curiosity remains but changes tone. It becomes observational rather than acquisitive. There is interest without urgency, wonder without demand. Questions arise and pass without needing resolution. Silence between thoughts becomes acceptable, not as absence, but as space. Discriminate. This space is not empty. It holds awareness without direction. Forbes, the universe does not fill this space. It does not intrude. It simply continues beyond it. Awareness stays where it belongs. Ambiguous. Experience. The self becomes lighter in this arrangement, not smaller, less burdened. Fragrance no longer needs to be defended against scale. It does not need to matter universally to matter locally. This removes a deep pressure many never name. Psychologists to be significant beyond context. Profession's significance returns to where it functions, in interaction, in care, in choice. The universe does not compete on which it briefly occurs. Nothing more is required. The mind recognizes this and stops reaching, not because it is finished, but because it has found its range. Within that range, experience continues, quietly, fully, unconcerned, unresponsive, and within it, awareness persists for a moment, not trying to extend itself into infinity, but resting comfortably inside its limits, still enough to notice, still enough to be. With enough time spent in this perspective, something subtle happens. The universe stops feeling like a concept at all. It no longer appears as an idea to be held or examined. It becomes background. Not ignored, psychologist, but integrated so completely that it no longer demands recognition. Later than contemplated, like gravity, like time, is simply part of how reality operates. In this state, thought becomes quieter without effort, alternates between wonder and confusion. Those reactions belong to an earlier stage. Now there is steadiness. Embarrassment arise and fall away without being framed against infinity. They are allowed to stand on their own scale. Forbes, a conversation does not need cosmic relevance to matter. A decision does not need universal consequence to be meaningful. The universe does not invalidate the local. Aesthetics where the local exists. For this distinction clarifies attention. The Raj is no longer spent trying to reconcile smallness with worth. The comparison dissolves. Smugglingness is not opposed to value. It is the condition that makes value possible. Intermittings that can end can be cared for. Only moments that pass can be felt. The universe does not experience its own duration. It does not witness its own expansion. Conflicting does. Everyone awareness exists only where limitation allows it. Transitioning fragility. Fragility is no longer weakness. It is sensitivity. It allows experience to register. It allows meaning to form. The universe is robust because it does not need to notice. Life is delicate because it does. Neither state is superior. Retali occupy different functions. Understanding this removes the urge to elevate one over the other. The universe does not need consciousness. Consciousness does not need to dominate the universe. Doc. They intersect briefly and then continue along their separate paths. This intersection is enough. Buffering, the mind, recognizing this, releases the need for synthesis. There is no final framework that unites scale and experience into a single explanation. They coexist without merging. The U follows physical law because experience follows perception. Both are complete. Thought stops trying to compress one into the other. Kissing mental tension eases. The desire for ultimate answers softens, not because answers are unreachable, but because they are no longer required for orientation. Orientation returns to immediate conditions, to what can be sensed, to what can be responded to. This does not shrink curiosity, it refines it. And more precise. They no longer reach for totality, they seek clarity where interaction is possible. The universe remains an open field of unknowns, and that openness is no longer unsettling. Regained, concepts perhaps a stable feature rather than a problem. The mind adjusts to living without closure. Submerged, don't all stories resolve? Proficiency is no longer expected. The next acceptance allows thought to slow even further. Moments stretch slightly, kissing not in duration, but in depth. Attention settles more fully into what is present. Distraction loses some of its pull. The future stops pressing forward with urgency. The past stops demanding reinterpretation. Both exist, but neither dominates awareness. The universe continues expanding beyond perception. Structures evolve over immense spans of time. Chemotherapy, none of this requires acknowledgement. It does not change whether it is known or unknown. Assisting independence removes pressure from understanding. Knowledge becomes optional rather than compulsory. Unquestioned. The mind is allowed to rest without ignorance. Rest becomes a form of alignment. In this alignment, the self feels less like a fixed entity, more like a temporary coordination of processes. Thoughts arise, sebabetsations pass, sememoriations past. None of this forms a permanent center. Idea of a central observer dissolves gradually, not ownership. Experience without narrative insistence. The universe does not observe us. We do not need to observe it constantly. Each exists independently, connected only by the brief occurrence of awareness within matter. This occurrence does not ask for interpretation. It does not demand to be framed as miracle or accident. Still happens. Becanner is sufficient. That mind, no longer reaching not empty, not full. Burlington. Here is not the absence of thought. Smirk, the universe remains immeasurable. Understanding remains partial. And neither condition requires correction. Within this balance, existence continues quietly, ventilation by moment, not attempting to transcend its context. Unanswered unfolding where it can. We tally exact enough to be untouched by notice, and precise enough locally to allow a brief moment of awareness to settle into calm and remain there without needing to move. Over time, this calm perspective reshapes how reality is interpreted. Not dramatically, not all at once. It works quietly, beneath conscious thought. Biologist. Over appears as something separate from daily life. It is not out there. It is implied in every moment, without needing to be referenced. The floor beneath your feet exists because of cosmic processes. The light entering your eyes began as distant fusion. The atoms forming each breath were shaped long before intention existed, long before there was anyone to notice them. None of this requires attention to remain true. The mind learns to live comfortably with this background knowledge. It stops rehearsing it. It stops returning to it for reassurance or awe. The scale of the universe becomes like a horizon you do not stare at constantly, but always know is there. This knowledge changes how certainty is held. Certainty becomes provisional, flexible. Beliefs loosen without collapsing. Opinions soften without disappearing. The universe does not punish uncertainty. It does not reward conviction. Belongs are local conditions, not cosmic ones. This reduces internal conflict. There is no longer a need to be absolutely right, only sufficiently accurate to navigate experience. This sufficiency brings relief. The pressure to resolve existence into a coherent explanation fades. Life does not need to make complete sense to be lived well. The universe itself does not explain why it exists. It simply continues. This continuation without justification becomes a quiet model. Not a failure without total explanation, it is alignment with reality. Reality does not provide final answers. It provides conditions and consequences. Meaning arises within those conditions. Predict. This understanding alters how difficulty is experienced. Challenges are no longer interpreted as disruptions to a grand narrative. They are seen as local disturbances within a vast, indifferent flow. This does not remove pain. It removes drama. Seni's suffering is not cosmic. It is personal. Stabilize. And because it is personal, it can be met directly. The universe does not amplify hardship. It does not minimize it either. It remains neutral. This neutrality allows response without resentment, fortified expectation. One can act without believing the action must echo beyond time. This is not resignation. It is clarity about scale. Actions matter where they have reach. Beyond that, they dissolve naturally. The mind stops trying to extend influence into infinity. It learns to work within boundaries. Boundaries no longer feel like loss. They feel like orientation. Without them, attention would scatter. With them, it focuses. The universe provides no guidance on how to live. It offers no instruction. Guidance emerges from interaction, from empathy, from awareness of consequence. These qualities do not require cosmic endorsement. They require presence. Presence becomes the central practice, though it is not framed as one. It is simply how experience unfolds when nothing else competes for dominance. Thoughts arise and pass without being judged against scale. Emotions surface and recede without needing universal meaning. Everything becomes more proportionate. The mind notices that it no longer reaches for the universe during moments of uncertainty. It does not seek reassurance from vastness. It does not seek escape into insignificance. Were forms of avoidance. Now attention stays with what is happening. The mind. It frees it from unnecessary abstraction. Jin-a. The universe remains abstract by nature. Trying to internalize it completely, it remain external, does not diminish understanding. Fencing it. Understanding becomes layered. Some things are known directly. Some are known indirectly. Some are known only as limits. Limits are not frustrating here. They are informative. They show where thought naturally ends and experience begins. The universe exceeds those limits effortlessly. It does not challenge them. Knowing and being. Being takes precedence. Withholding infinity relaxes into its actual capacity. Within this capacity, attention becomes steady, not fixed, steady. It moves when needed. It rests when possible. There is no longer a sense that something larger is watching or waiting. No expectation of judgment from scale. Not an observer, it is a condition. Conditions do not judge. This realization removes a subtle anxiety many carry without noticing, a quiet tension held somewhere in the background. Nothing is measuring. Existence is not evaluated. It simply occurs. This stabilizing, the mind no longer oscillates between meaning and meaninglessness. Both extremes fade. What remains is function, response, presence. The universe continues to expand beyond reach. Awareness continues briefly within reach. They do not interfere with one another. And in that non-interference, the mind remains still, not because it has reached the end of understanding, but because it has reached a point where understanding is no longer required for peace to exist. Stop placing itself at the center of experience. not through effort, not through discipline, but through familiarity. The vastness becomes ordinary, not small, not reduced, but no longer startling. Like living near the ocean long enough that the sound of waves fades into background. The water is still immense. It simply no longer demands reaction. In this familiarity, perception settles into a quieter rhythm. Thoughts arise without needing to be framed against scale. Feelings move without being measured by permanence. Bracelets remains unchanged, less reactive. There is no longer a need to remind oneself of insignificance. There is no logarithy importance. Existence is no longer interpreted vertically as something rising toward meaning or falling into nothingness. It is understood horizontally, moment beside moment. Throttle spence beside experience, each complete within its boundaries. This horizontal view changes how time is felt. The future no longer pulls attention forward with urgency. The past no longer drags it backward for validation. Time becomes a medium rather than a pressure. Within this medium, action becomes simpler, not easier, but clearer. Depth's decisions are made without the expectation that they must echo beyond context. Effort is applied where it has effect. Rest is taken without guilt. The universe does not record effort. It does not preserve intention. The need to perform existence. Life no longer feels like something being observed from above. There is no imagined perspective measuring progress or failure. Only local consequences remain. Physicist with localization of consequence sharpens responsibility. Peace, care becomes more, attention becomes more deliberate. Defense. One no longer acts for abstraction. One acts for response. The universe does not reward morality. It does not punish neglect. Those mechanisms exist only among conscious systems. Plagued, this does not make them less real. It makes them more focused. Thermot, ethics return to where they function, between beings capable of being affected. Scale no longer dilutes responsibility. It concentrates it. Embellisted, that it no longer reaches outward during moments of doubt. It does not seek reassurance from infinity. It does not seek comfort in insignificance. Both were forms of escape. Undergone, now attention remains where it can engage. Does not feel heavy. It feels natural. The universe does not interfere with it. It does not comment. Physicist is not emptiness. It is space without instruction. Within that space, alphabetical cases for truth this arrangement. It trusts that meaning does not need to be universal, prompting that value does not need to be permanent. Trust replaces certainty. Certainty once felt necessary to remain grounded. Now, grounding comes from presence. Prescribe does not require answers. It requires contact. Contact with sensation. Expelled with response. The universe remains beyond contact, and that is appropriate. Trying to bring it closer was never required. Distance is part of its nature. The mind no longer attempts to close that distance. forbidden it to exist without tension. This allowance frees attention for what is near. Near does not mean trivial. Near means reachable. Referring reach defines relevance. The universe exceeds reach, but life exists entirely within it. Understand this removes a subtle confusion, the confusion between knowing and participating. More, knowing is limited. Participation is immediate. Tentative the first sparingly. It allows the second continuously. Participation becomes the primary mode of existence. The mind shifts from interpretation to engagement, not impulsively, not blindly, but steadily. Fighting, Stephen, still happens to resolve existence into a final picture. Dismissing remains incomplete, and that incompleteness is no longer disturbing. The universe does not complete itself either. It continues unfolding without closure. Comcast was always a local idea. Accept removes a quiet pressure many carry, the pressure to arrive somewhere final. There is no final position to reach, no stable endpoint to secure. Existence moves, and movement is enough. Resists this motion, kissing within it at its own scale. Airborne is not surrender, erased. Universe flows according to physical law. Life flows according to perception and response. They do not compete. The Mao aligned with its function remains calm, not numb, not detached. Calm because it no longer asks to be more than it is. The universe remains vast beyond measure. Awareness remains brief and local. Neither condition demands change, and within this quiet coexistence, the mind stays still, not because it has reached the edge of thought, but because it has learned where thought belongs and where it does not need to go. When the universe stops being a question. After a while, the universe no longer feels like something to be solved. It becomes something that simply exists alongside awareness. The mind notices this shift slowly, almost quietly. There is no moment of realization that announces itself, no internal statement declaring arrival. And there is a reduction in tension. Questions still appear, but they no longer demand completion. They rest without pressure. And the mind learns that this lack of response is not rejection, stiffness, neutrality. Neutrality allows curiosity to soften, to explore without expectation. These changes the texture of thinking. Thoughts become lighter, not because they are fewer, but because they no longer carry the burden of resolution. The need to connect everything fades. Patterns are observed without insisting on total coherence. Meaning becomes their fading of resolution, meaning a variable that is not fixed to again as what of the Petra. Most of the spaces they sit me a resolution. The meaning are begin without fader. The no man feels like today, they sit be somewhere cruelly their life. Meaning a problem's no without in purpose note. Thinking about the universe starts being a question. Neutrality, the moving infirmly quickly have a minute. More than the company being and discovered. Menses, meanlings becomes local again. The mind stops reaching for the largest possible frame. It chooses frames that match its scale. This choice is not resignation, it is accuracy. Awareness functions best within boundaries. The universe does not provide those boundaries. Life does. Breath defines one. Attention defines another. Memory defines a third. These boundaries are flexible. Freshmen, within them, experience becomes manageable. Sensation regains importance, not as distraction, but as grounding. The feelings of air entering body against a surface, the sound of distant movement. These details were never small, they were simply overlooked. The universe does not diminish them. It does not compete for attention. The mind once believed it had to choose between the vast and the immediate. It now understands that only one is accessible. Consciously, accessibility becomes the new measure of relevance. Basically, not make the universe irrelevant. It places it where it belongs, as context. Context without commentary unfolds at a human pace. Thought slows down, not deliberately, naturally. Dissolves when it is no longer justified by scale. Nothing monumental to be sufficient on their own. Battlefield still exists, but it no longer looms. The past remains, but it no longer anchors identity. Identity becomes lighter too, less narrative, more function. Who one is matters less than how one responds. Response replaces story. Buffy, the universe does not record stories. It registers outcomes, reflections to outcomes. This alignment simplifies behavior. One acts where action matters, listens where listening changes something, pauses where movement would add noise. Noise becomes noticeable now. Not external noise, but internal excess. Overthinking, overframing, overinterpreting. Enforcing once felt protective, now they feel unnecessary. Stiffness does not require protection from interpretation. It continues unchanged. The mind releases the need to keep up with it. Instead, it keeps pace with experience. This pacing feels humane. Mistakes are no longer magnified by cosmic comparison. Success returned to proportion. Bernstein restores balance. Balance does not mean stillness. It means adaptability. The universe is adaptable too, at scales far beyond perception. Life mirrors this adaptability at its own level. There is no need to compare them. Comparison was always a misunderstanding. Understanding deepens without expanding outward. It deepens inward. Attention refines itself. It learns what deserves care. Care becomes selective. This selectivity is not cold. It is sustainable. Mind realizes it cannot care about everything, and it no longer tries. Cares about what it touches. Declines connection. The universe remains untouched. Flesh, and that is acceptable. Benefiting this brings relief. Relief does not arrive as pleasure. It arrives as absence. The absence of pressure. The absence of obligation to comprehend beyond reach. In this absence, clarity appears. Clarity is quiet. It does not announce truth. It allows orientation, knows where one is, not in space, but in relation, ramifications to time, to others, friendship. The universe remains distant, but life feels closer. This closeness is enough. Enough becomes a meaningful word again. Completion of the present moment. The present does not need the universe to validate it. It exists fully on its own. And the mind, recognizing this, rests more easily within it.